Hey guys, Naj here with a sub-rogue damage guide for patch 7.35. In this guide, I'll explain how and when to deal your damage, and how to prioritize damage and stuns during burst. The damage rotation for a sub-rogue in Arena depends on a lot of factors and is very different from how you would do damage in PvE. Sub-rogues do not have a set rotation because of talents and racials like Relentless or Orc racial, and you will also have to prioritize stuns before dealing damage. The same goes for prioritizing against classes with talents that can break stuns. For example, Way of the Crane Monks, that paladins with an extra trinket from their artifact, or DKs with Icebound Fortitude. A big part of playing sub-rogue is prioritizing during your rotation. Your first priority as a sub-rogue should be to have stuns on your kill target when you're trying to do damage, and not leaving a gap in between your stuns. For example, if a target is on 50% health and about to get out of a stun, your priority should be to stun the target again over doing damage. If you leave a gap between your stuns, there's a chance the target can either get away or use a cooldown to survive. Second priority is to keep up your dot from Nightblade up on the kill target, since targets will take 15% more damage while the dot is active. Third is cooldown management. You should have a cooldown ready for every setup you do. For example, Cold Blood or Gormaw's Bite. If you do not have a cooldown ready, make sure you at least have Symbols of Death ready to increase your damage before doing a setup. You should only use your burst when you have CC and can force cooldowns with it. Additionally, you shouldn't try to get CC if you don't have burst. So to summarize, the priority list would look something like this. 1. Don't leave any gaps between your stuns while doing damage. 2. Keep your dot from Nightblade up. 3. Cooldown management. 4. Burst when you have CC. 5. Don't CC unless you have burst. In this clip, I kidney shot the paladin, cheap shot the warlock, and then cheap shot the DK. After that, I refreshed my Nightblade dot and then cheap shot the warlock again. My mage follows up with a Ring of Frost, and my priest fears the paladin. In this clip, I kidney shot the paladin, and I shadow step to the priest, and I open with cheap shot. After that, I get up my Nightblade dot, and then I cheap shot the priest again before the first one ends. And I follow up with a third stun, and the priest uses dispersion. In this clip, I don't have any cooldowns besides Symbols of Death. I kidney shot the paladin, but I get rake stunned by the feral during our setup. So I use my human trinket to get out of the stun. I use Symbols of Death, and I cheap shot the priest. And I drop Smoke Bomb. Since I already had my Nightblade dot up before we did our setup, I can burst extra hard this go, and we end up forcing the priest trinket, paladin's trinket, and Hand of Sacrifice. In this clip, I get my Nightblade dot up on the priest, I shadow step to the paladin, and I kidney shot him afterwards. Then I cheap shot the priest, then use Symbols of Death, and the priest dies. In all these clips, I make sure not to leave a gap between my stuns instead of doing maximum damage. If I would leave any gaps, they would most likely use CC to peel our damage or defensive cooldowns. Your damage rotation, besides keeping in mind the priority list mentioned above, is fairly simple. You want to have your Nightblade dot up as much as possible, especially before a swap or a setup. After that, your rotation is Shadow Strike while Shadow Dance is active, and Gloom Blade when Shadow Dance is not active to generate combo points. You will then use these combo points for Eviscerates to do damage. You can choose which cooldowns to use during your setups to force cooldowns. So to summarize, your rotation would look like this. 1. Get up Nightblade, since targets with Nightblade take 15% more damage. 2. While Shadow Dance is active, use Shadow Strike. 3. While Shadow Dance is not active, use Gloomblade. 4. Use Eviscerate. Let's look at a clip shown before, but this time pay attention to the damage rotation instead. So in the first clip, I got the kidney shot on the Paladin, the cheap shot on the Warlock, and the cheap shot on the DK. After that, I got Nightblade up on the Warlock. Now you can see I have 5 combo points from using cheap shot, and I already have my dot up. So I can spend these points on an Eviscerate. Once my Shadow Dance ends, I begin using Gloomblade to generate more combo points. And get another Eviscerate off. In this clip, I kidney shot the Priest, activate Shadow Dance, use Shadow Strike twice. I'm now at 5 combo points, so I can use an Eviscerate to deal damage. When you land a full stun on a target, you can start bursting. Keep in mind you'll have to restun the target during your rotation to avoid leaving a gap between your stuns. Try to have your Nightblade up on a target before bursting, since you'll have to reapply it, which will come at an opportunity cost of potential Eviscerates in your burst. This won't always be possible if you do a swap, and you should be aware of who you swap to. If you swap to a target with Orc Racial or Relentless, for example, and you have to get your Nightblade dot up while bursting, then you only have a split second to burst the target down before you have to restun already. In these rare situations, you can sometimes throw Gormaw out before your dot, just to get some damage off on Orc Relent targets. Your main burst comes from Gormaw's Bite and Cold Blood. You should use these during dance to build up all of your modifiers when you burst. Shadow Dance activates your Dark Shadow talent, which gives you 25% extra damage in PvP. Prey on the Weak makes the stun target take 9% extra damage in PvP, and Symbols of Death increases your damage by another 8% in PvP. Stacking all of these effects up before using Gormaw's Bite and Cold Blood while you're bursting will give you a high amount of burst damage while Shadow Dance is active. While bursting, you should also be aware of how many cooldowns you commit. For example, in the opener you could easily force cooldowns without committing every offensive cooldown you have. In this clip I have Symbols of Death active, and I blind the monk. I use Gormaw's Bite after to increase the damage and stack my modifiers. And I force Dispersion from the Priest. In this clip shown before, we opened on the Priest. I cheap shot the Priest, and then I used Cold Blood, Symbols of Death, and Shadow Blades. I saved Gormaw's Bite for this since I knew there'd be enough damage to force Dispersion and I could use Gormaw's Bite in another setup. Shadow Blades can be used for extra burst damage or to generate your charges of Shadow Dance. If you have no charges of Shadow Dance, Shadow Blades can quickly bring your Shadow Dance off cooldown again, since every combo point generator gives you an additional combo point, combined with the Deepening Shadow passive, which reduces the remaining cooldown of your Shadow Dance by 1.5 seconds for every combo point spent. You can quickly get your charges of Shadow Dance back by using finishing moves like Eviscerate, Nightblade, Kidney Shot, while Shadow Blades is active. That's going to be it for this guide, guys. Please leave a plus skill if you enjoyed it and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you guys next time.